Again, this is a collaboration between all the Texas Hymns chapters. This year it's in Houston. It's going to be May 11th, 12th, 13th, I believe, in Houston. So you can Google Texas Regional Hymns for all the details. They have sponsorships available too if you want to partake. And finally, I want to thank our sponsors. None of this is possible without our great sponsors that we have. And I do want to take a moment to highlight a very particular sponsor. All of our events are filmed. All the AV is set up by Lone Star Communications. This is their 30th event they have done with DFW Hymns. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate them in setting all this up. It helps us lower our costs because they volunteer their time and their equipment, and therefore we don't have to pay for it as a chapter and put that cost on you. But the commitment and the dedication that that team puts together, they come a day early, spend hours. I think 8 o'clock they were here last night setting up this venue. So I just want to give them a special heads up and thank you so much for everything that they've done. We do 4 events a year, and again, this is their 30th, so do the math how long they've been committed and what a great dedication they show to us. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Melinda Costin, who's going to facilitate our CIO panel. Just one more piece of housekeeping. When we open it up for general questions, there's a standing mic at the back of the room. Please, if you have a question, go to the mic and ask the question from that perspective. I'm going to turn it over to Melinda.
So excited to see such a big crowd here. I wonder if you all give yourselves a pat on the back to make the time. Try to get away from your daily activities and be clearly all one of the CIOs who are going to help today and help inform all of us as to what is really important, what they focused on. And I think we have some other CIOs in the audience as well. So please feel free to jump in as we ask questions. We're going to have the whole panel add comments to those questions. So if you've got some insights you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to come up and share those. So we're going to start with a subject that I know is very, very, very dear to his heart and actually is on the mind and brain, the heart of all of us when we go to bed every night, and that's the issue of security. So the specific question is, as security threats continue to increase, for those of you who don't know, they are crippling almost daily. That's true. What our number of security threats were last week, higher this week, significantly higher than it was the same time last week. So there's not a day goes by that this is not on the mind of everybody in every IT department and every hospital. So as they continue to increase, how is healthcare taking proactive action protecting health information, and what is the biggest risk to policy?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is a very important topic. As many of you know, and you've probably seen someone publicized in the news and whatnot, recent breaches, recent hacks with Anthem, community health systems, and others. It's a big, big problem. First, personally, I think all of us have learned not to discriminate what kind of wine we drink anymore, so to be able to get through the problem. But no, in reality, it starts with a couple aspects. Number one is knowledge and awareness. So as I spoke a little earlier about advocacy, educating the lawmakers on what's needed within healthcare, what we're missing, some of the, again, key facets of rules of the road. It's amazing that medical device manufacturers, providers, all different parts of the healthcare ecosystem operate within different parameters and are sanctioned under different parameters. While the FTC might not bring down sanctions, the OCR most gosh will. So to the degree of it, there's a number of things that we're missing at a national level that require education, awareness, and whatnot. You're seeing the healthcare community come together to really be able to educate and bring it together. A little more tactically, a little more at home. You're seeing a number of products come out on the market that really are starting to combat sort of the broad scale of what's going on, even locally at where I'm at right now. Looking at my intrusion prevention system this morning, we're getting about 20 scans per second, usually coming from Russia, China, and those sorts of things. So we're doing a lot of domain exclusions and whatnot. So all the way down to the granular level, it's an awareness factor for those who make the laws, to those who implement the laws, to those who execute the tactical things needed to keep yourself safe. And then, at the same token, watching the industry change around us and watching, everybody's lovely word HIPAA and others change and modify slightly, how that affects everything as a ripple effect. So, to the degree of it, Laura, that this is a very important topic that all of us are fighting, again, at a very granular, all the way to a very top level. So.
Thank you so much, David. Billy, any comments?
I would say what's been interesting to me is watching collectively the teams that work in our hospitals and our health systems, the vendors, organizations like Himss and others who are creating subgroups focused on this. If you remember 7-10 years ago, as we were all starting down the EHR journey, it was very difficult to find talent, but then the industry responded, the industry matured, they created all these different avenues, and I think you're starting to see the same thing in the security realm, to where we are becoming more mature, we are becoming more technologically advanced, and subsequently, because of all the advocacy and the discussion around security, you're starting to see our organizations being willing to invest more. So the good news is, we're, as we always have done when we've got a problem facing us, we're catching up from an information and investment standpoint, which I think is fantastic, because this problem is one that will not stop changing for sure.
I think at the lowest level, for us, one of our biggest risks, unfortunately, are our clinicians and the staff that work in our hospitals. When I talk to our CISO, the phishing attempts, etc., we get hit with are our greatest point of vulnerability. So when we talk about advocacy, for me, the roles in our hospitals, it starts there, and helping our clinicians, our stakeholders, and our executives understand we hold our patients' lives, but we hold them in a different way with their data. And starting right there in our hospital, helping them understand that they can put us at risk, I think is one of the biggest things on my security platform for the year.
This is, excuse me, very good AV from Lone Star. This is one of those areas that if we don't take it seriously, our board reminds us to. When I spoke earlier in the dinner session around things that are top of mind from our board of trustees, this is probably top on the list. We present quarterly in our audit compliance and security risk management subcommittee, and so they're always terribly concerned about this. It's something that absolutely take seriously. It's an area that investment is never questioned. When you look at ROI, this is one of those areas where we say, there's no ROI, and the response is there doesn't need to be. We understand the size and the urgency and the risk at stake. On a lighter note, I would say it's dealing with it's one of my favorite parts of the job, because we get to deal with the FBI, and it introduces new terms. Like we had a spear phishing attempt, and then when they went after the CFO, I said something along the lines of, "We've got another spear phishing," and my CISO corrected me and said, "No, this is whaling." The board loves it. Now we've got all the board members that are like, "Oh, it's spear phishing. It's a big deal." So it's a lot of fun.
Items that relates to that, and one is to remind all of us who are in the hospitals to share information that we're learning about this, share within your own site, share across sites. Aaron's got everybody's got some wonderful ideas that are usually unique to something that they have found, but if we all sharing those same wonderful ideas, we'll all be at a higher level of security at the same time. From a vendor perspective, if you've had market success, if you have a tool, and you work with one of these hospitals, and you've created a wonderful, successful outcome from that, be sure to share that, so everybody can have that.
I'll say this, there are two kinds of organizations. Those that are being under attack, and those that are unaware that they're under attack. There's no other option for that.
Well, the next topic has the same enthusiasm around it that Aaron has around the topic of security, and that's really the orientation towards accumulating patient data from multiple sources for better interpretation. So this is going to be directed at Joey, but I just know, in fact, CHR has been way in the forefront looking at this issue and addressing it for quite some time. The specific question is, as patients strive to have their health needs addressed, they often cross multiple organizations to grapple with perhaps one place for a mammogram, another place for special surgery, and yet another for primary care. How do we, as CIOs, work to support a patient-centric view of patients' data to allow more thorough decision-making by the caregivers and for the patients themselves?
What's interesting is to me, buried in this question is really a collaboration, not just within THR to make sure disparate business units are sharing data, but it's really looking across the stage as an example of looking out in the audience. One of the biggest challenges we probably have to interoperability in this country is competition. And the reality is, you have small pockets of very hyper-competitive markets, such as Dallas or Houston, for example, where historically the mantra has been, you seal off the walls and you remain siloed inside your organization. That's not the future, and that's not what patients are going to need in our industry. And so one of our biggest challenges is figuring out how we as organizations can begin to work together to share data about a patient's experience so that somebody in Dallas can go to any one of our facilities and have it be known what their care has been throughout the Metroplex. And it really, yes, it starts internally because you have to build those foundational infrastructure abilities to share data on your own. But I think we've got sort of a second chance coming up here. As some of you know, our first attempt at a regional HIE here in North Texas had some shaky results, but we've got a reprieve, and there's a second chance coming, and it's a really fantastic opportunity for us as leaders, IT leaders of our organizations to be able to create an avenue for sharing experiences about each one of us as patients from different health systems, so that if we're ever in a scenario where we need somebody to know what's happened to us historically, we're creating the avenue to do that.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo what Joey was stating there. I think the other aspect of it is a lack of awareness of the importance of being able to rapidly share information among organizations. We talked earlier at our earlier panel about risk appetite and different organizations having different types of appetites towards sharing data. I think one of the fundamental aspects of this role, being a CIO, is educating those that maybe are fearful of stepping outside their comfort zone. I think change is a very difficult thing, but in this case, it's worth taking the mantle and running with it and educating those that perhaps have been obstinate in the past towards information sharing. Credit to THR and credit to the organizations that have blazed that trail and trying to push forward. You even saw with the North Texas Accountable Health Partnership how you saw some of the children's hospitals jump on board, but the other hospitals held back. It's not for lack of trying, it was just for lack of risk appetite. And so I think now with the second go around, now with new blood, new ideas, a bit more maturity in the market, it's up to all of us, every single one, not just the CIOs, everybody in this room, to take the time to educate decision makers in the hospitals, because it's a very important thing.
It is. I think the thing I find myself personally struggling with is balancing still the lack of maturity in my own system and making sure we're sharing information and have integration even when our patients hop between our system and our hospital. So as a CIO, it's hard to balance the priority of taking care of your system and your hospitals and making sure an existing loyal patient base gets their care, and how do we integrate at a market level, because both are extremely important. But the pressure from our business leaders is first priority here. So that's, I'm all ears if you other CIOs have got great wisdom in this space.
Never ask for great wisdom right before I start talking. Down lower on the wisdom scale, I tend to believe that charity begins at home, right? So if you're gonna, you need to think globally and act locally, or however the saying goes. So I think it is our imperative to take care of the patients that are in our four walls first, because they've entrusted their care to you. So, if you've got disparate systems going from the ED to OBS to med-surg, first of all, you better take care of that issue and make sure that they've got whatever they need along that patient journey. Then as you look outside your walls, I think the thing that I always struggle with is, and this might have been what happened in North Texas, folks that know more about it than I could advise, but it's got to have a financial model that makes sense and sustains, and that's the question that I I keep asking about all these HIEs. It's, it's like communism is really good in theory, but when you introduce it in a free market economy, it doesn't really flourish. And we've kind of got the same problem with HIEs. There's some things that are incredibly good for humans, but if nobody's making money off of it, how long can the government subsidize them? So there's got to be a financial model that makes these things work, unless we're just going to do it in terms of taxing or whatever else. So I think that when you fix that barrier, if somebody can make a profit off something, it'll always get done.
Financial model. Is e-health available to us? And how many of us are participating in that? What is the relationship of significance and the priority of connecting with e-health versus the regional HIEs? What do we think the future of regional HIEs are if e-health is successful?
Great. Remind me of that later on. So I'll get too deep, very quickly here, but so here's what we're doing at least. We believe that we are the first practice in the state of Texas to legally offer video visits. I know that there's somebody doing it before us, but my understanding of the Texas Medical Association mandate is that they have, for a patient to see a physician in a video visit, they have to be a pre-existing patient. Is that me? Is that just on the P's? Okay. Yeah, sorry. That's what got me off American Idol, too. You think I won't learn? But, so they have to be a pre-existing patient of that. So how do you say pre-existing patient in our practice without using P's? That's the predicament that I found myself. And you have to have seen them in the last 12 months. It's currently Texas and Arkansas are the only two states that have this type of legislation. And I won't make the joke that I usually do about that being a poor company to find yourself in, because it's usually at that point that I find out how many Razorback fans are in the audience. Right, but Texas is in the group too, right? So a lot of us are working towards that. We're also doing what we call, right now I don't know what we call it, but we do telemedicine. It's, the not real time, back and forth. There's a word for it. Asynchronous, thank you. It is not P. So the asynchronous care, and we've actually had a whole lot of uptake on that. So, I think everybody's going there. It's another one of those things that we've got to figure out where the money is. And this is the compensation models are worked out. That's what we're hearing from a lot of physicians is, and I don't mean to cast aspersions on any profession, but when someone is used to paying the mortgage and putting the kids in school, and they do it this way, and they have for the past 30 years, and then you say, these simple visits that, it's an ear infection or whatever it is, we're going to start skimming those off the top, and we're going to take them through an e-visit, and you're not going to be reimbursed for them, and they're not going to show up. I mean, that's, like the guy said, risky business. You don't mess with another man's livelihood. And so then that's a bit of a challenge to address.
I'll jump in real quick. So from an e-visit perspective, I think this is an important topic that's sometimes missed. I think we're all pretty familiar with funding models, and I don't want to get too granular on that. But just keep in the back of your mind as you're talking to folks, you're looking into this, that if you're in pediatrics per se versus adult care, the reimbursement models are very different. And so as we've been educating for the Himss side, CMS and others on various reimbursement models and whatnot, to look at two aspects. One, to make sure you don't leave out the little guy and thus the pediatric hospitals and others. And two, to make sure that you understand the cost of entry. Sometimes the problem with e-visits and telehealth is the barriers to the technology and the cost factor. If you're a rural hospital in the middle of Texas, you're not going to be able to afford what it takes to do telemonitoring, tele whatever, any type of e-visits at all. Now, I personally believe in it. Again, we're kind of DFW, which is great. Our payer mix is pretty decent depending where you are. But if you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't have access to that, you're fully, Medicare, Medicaid, whatnot, it's going to be very difficult to enter into that and be able to participate. So just keep that as an important bullet point.
about where our teachers is moving from a vision care perspective. But thanks to technology and shifts in financial incentives, care will begin to move from the palms of consumers' hands, providing care anywhere, anytime. How do you see this shift in technology improving patient care, and how is your organization adopting it?
First, I want to reframe that a little bit. We called it a shift in technology, but I honestly think that this is our opportunity for revolution. I know that's a strong word, but if you look at the forces driving this change, I'm going to use the buzzword, guys, disruptive innovation, I'm sorry, but it's true. We have employers changing their payment model. I mean, health systems changing their payment model. Employers trying to manage wellness programs and health plans reducing costs. Even the pharmaceutical companies are connecting with customers. And then you look at healthcare at a macro level in this nation, and you want to be here if you have an acute issue in the USA, but does anyone have any idea where the USA ranks from the World Health Organization in terms of our healthcare system? 37th. And when you think about why that is, we're best in acute care, it's because we don't manage wellness or preventative care. And I think our opportunity for revolution is this. It's care in the palm of the hand. This is our opportunity to truly get healthcare into our patients' hands. And the amazing thing is, guess what the enabler of that is? Us. It's IT. So talk about an exciting time to be in the field. And I know all of our companies are dabbling in this space. I mean, just to give examples for locally, our organization is, we're managing discharge instructions and making sure our patients are compliant with those. We're, avoiding 30-day readmissions by reaching out to them. We're all in this space. We've shied away from e-visits from the legislation that we talked about, but our market in Utah has a full virtual urgent care. Patients can get a PCP visit to a specialist visit without leaving their home. And so the thing that excites me about this also scares me. I think as an IT profession, we need to adapt and change the way we operate to lead this initiative. I think if we don't, the revolution's not going to be possible. This requires a different skill set, set of competencies, and compensation of our organizations. And so I'm extremely excited, but we've got to up our game to make this happen.
We often say that we're on the technical side of it and we don't get that same opportunity to directly affect patient care. But here's a perfect example where, as an IT person, we can directly affect patient care. Really wonderful thing to be able to do. Do you want to chime in on anything there?
So I agree. It's a really exciting time, and I think we can have a huge impact. But I really don't think that technology is the gating factor, because when we talk about mobility, that video visit in the palm of your hand, we talk about multimodal access is really the vision. That if you're not feeling well, do you want a video visit, an asynchronous visit? Do you want to find the nearest urgent care clinic? Do you want to make an appointment, or do you want us to Uber to you? And we're playing with those different models and trying to figure out what people will adapt to. But again, when you talk about wellness, we look at this kind of the same way that you look at patient engagement the same way that you do any type of consumer engagement. And very early on, what we heard from our leaders was, we need an app, we need an app, we need an app. And I said, no, we don't need an app, we need an engagement strategy, we need a model. And so the example that I used is American Airlines. I said, how many of y'all are married to American Airlines and you won't fly on anything else? And they had the Advantage program long before they had an app to work with that. So the app is just another interface, it's just another care setting. It can be another care setting, it can be another way to interact with the patient, but they've got to be engaged. And this is where I go back to the thing that I said earlier in the vendor session. When it gets to wellness, if you don't consume 4 big gulps in a day, and you don't smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, and you don't just sit there watching TV all day, and you don't have 4 Big Macs a day, then we know that those 4 things together really impact the wellness of our communities and our nation. So I love the fact that technology can deliver new methods of care, but I guess, from a wellness perspective, I don't think it makes a difference until we find a way to really engage the patient in their own well-being. I mean, we know, and I won't put the figures because I'm terrible at remembering figures off the top of my head, but just the percentage of patients who follow their med orders after discharge, or even in an ambulatory setting, is incredibly low. And 27%, thank you. Thank God there's somebody smarter than me up here. So, 27% is it's abysmal, right? So, I mean, we know what we need to do. It's just like, it's like anything else. It's like losing weight. You know what to do. You consume less calories than you burn. Boom, it's math. We all learned that. But people need to get engaged, and until they do, it's just another cool tool that's not having results.
I very much agree with you. I think when I see ITs go to the next level, I think we need to move past being IT. I think we need to be the ones to step forward and be business development leaders, care integration leaders, and help develop this model. Because right now, our business executives aren't sure of the model themselves. And I think we're uniquely positioned to help develop that model, but we can't do it if we're IT. If we're at the table and we're IT, it doesn't matter. If we're at the table and we're a healthcare leader, it matters.
Struggle with exactly what both of you were alluding to. And it's as I think about this, let's just call it the digitalization of healthcare from the consumer or patient's perspective. Yes, everybody asks for the app, is what Matt's talking about, or the wearable or the technology. But my feeling, this is my opinion, it's like a bell curve from an adoption standpoint in that you've got one end of the curve who are going to adopt it because they're chronically ill and they are completely engaged, as Matt talked about engagement, they're engaged in that care. You've got the other end who are just the tech geeks, right? They've got every wearable you can see, it weighs it down, they've got like a Flavor Flav wearable around the neck.
Where is that available?
Yeah, we'll get you on that.
I was not aware of that.
You've got a perfect. And then in the middle, I really don't think you're going to see wide-scale adoption of, let's just call it digital health, until, sort of to Matt's point, financial model supports it, meaning A, the patient is somehow being incented to do that, or B, because of new arrangements in insurance, that patient is essentially a life that you are managing. And at that point, it has become a one-to-one relationship between that patient and you as a provider. Well, then they'll start to expect things, and then they'll start to engage in the use of the technology. But right now, if everybody in this room as a patient is just sort of a drive-by, let's just assume we're all relatively healthy, we're just kind of drive-by patients of whatever health system or provider is convenient to us. I'm not going to download the CareNow app because I stopped in on my way home because I had an earache, because I know I don't plan on going back to CareNow anytime soon. So really, to get that group in the middle, there has to be, to Matt's point, some kind of financial arrangement, or just to what we think we're all chasing, there has to be some kind of component that we're managing your life and now we're together engaged in a relationship. And I think that's when we'll see the adoption take off.
Very quickly, I think all these points are great and brilliant. The other aspect is, don't forget the humanization aspect of technology. What is the consumer expecting today as well as tomorrow? I have a 4-year-old and I have a 4-month-old, and it's amazing my 4-month-old is learning things faster than my firstborn did when she was 4 months old, because she's watching her older sister, and her older sister's on the iPad, swiping, going to apps, seeing the PBS app, whatnot, and she's already trying to swipe at the iPad, and I know, okay, she's going to be well advanced, here in a few years, and that's the expectation. So if we continue to look at modalities of engagement, whether it's in the palm, whether it's what the expectation is, to make sure we don't lose sight of what the humanization aspect is, what the consumer is looking for today as well as tomorrow. So that's a very important point.
On the financial incentive piece, you're right, but there are 2 models out there today. In 28 states, payers pay for an e-visit the same they do as an in-person visit. The other, it was a health system in Omaha, I think, that actually, the points program that they have when you go to the grocery store, etc. They have deployed with their app, with their discharge instruction, a point system that allows a reduction in payment for procedures at the hospital when they go back, when they have healthy, proactive activities, not drinking the big gulp, etc. I think the models are out there, but again, we need to help our executives create those models by being out there and looking for them.
Thank you all. That was a very useful discussion on that topic. Matt, a topic which you are very, very familiar with, the whole concept of mergers. The question is, high-profile mergers and acquisitions will likely continue into 2016. I'm anxious to see if there are any more that could possibly be happening in this area. With regulators taking center stage in the debate over how consolidation impacts consumers. What is the main driver for the continuing consolidation, and do you believe it is in the best interest of the consumers? And are there successes that you've seen in your particular merger that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I think it will continue, and I do think it is in the best interest of consumers and, more importantly, patients and humans, right? That's the overall objective. We're going for the triple aim of better access and better health. And I think the reason why we're doing it, you've heard Joel Allison, the CEO of Baylor Scott & White, talk about how we're all in for public health, and I'm paraphrasing him, of course, but I personally think it's the right model, because before that, I think the United States healthcare system is fundamentally broken in my point of view, and I'm talking as a consumer of health, not as a CIO. I always forget I'm supposed to start this with the opinions expressed herein are not that of Baylor Scott & White or any of my employers. I actually need to get a tattoo. But my personal opinion is the healthcare system is fundamentally broken. So yes, we do 37 in the world, right? But we have some of the best physicians. We have some of the best facilities. We have some of the best, like at Baylor, for example, Bunsey, we have some of the most world-renowned organ transplant physicians and programs in the whole world. But are we really taking care of the entire patient and the entire patient's family and the entire community? And so the reason that we merged, to take it back to the question, it wasn't so that we could be bigger or make more money or save money or anything else. It was really to serve the population, because we think this is the right place to go. And us specifically, this is the international symbol for Baylor and Scott & White. Us specifically, we're trying to get to the same place. I think we're all trying to get to the same place of truly integrated healthcare, of cradle to grave, figuratively and literally. And we came from different places. So Scott & White, there's probably, and I apologize, I probably said the exact same thing every year I've been up here. It's a very interesting model. There's there's probably like 5 or 6 like Scott & White in the United States, like the truly integrated, probably the Intermountains, the Geisingers, the Mayos. But it's, physicians, Dr. Scott and Dr. White built a clinic because they were the railroad surgeons, so they did it in the 1890s, and then they started building hospitals, then they established their own health plans. So when the physicians run it and they set everything up, it's truly integrated. It's literally physician-led. And Baylor came at integrated care from the other end of the spectrum, as probably 95% of U.S. healthcare is doing today, where the hospitals had the large critical mass, and they acquire the physician practices, and then they build up integrated care. So we're both educated by our past in the way that we come to the overall objective. But the overall objective is to provide that total holistic care of everything from wellness to just kind of your regular family medicine, primary care, to, of course, acute care, and then just kind of going through the care stages, right? So if you look at Scott & White, we tried to build this thing. We did build this thing. It was very successful for many decades. And frankly, when you look at the free market economy and the way that the different segments of the medical industry work, you kind of wonder how Scott & White stayed in business. And what I would say is, I always looked at it like the Galapagos Islands. If you look at Temple, it's kind of isolated there. You've got, for years and years, it was the only level 1 trauma center between Austin and Dallas, and now there's one in Austin. It was the only one between San Antonio and Dallas, now there's one in Austin. But it's pretty self-contained. It's kind of like a little island there. And so they built everything, 4-year med school, health plan, very integrated. The health plan pays for e-visits, that type of thing. And I think Baylor says, man, that is the right method of care. That works. We want to be truly integrated. Scott & White had SNFs and continuing care hospitals and hospice business and all that kind of thing, and rehab, and literally soup to nuts. And maybe not literally soup to nuts, figuratively soup to nuts. So the merger had to happen because when you're trying to serve a population as large as the state of Texas, you need critical mass. You need primary care physicians. You need all those facilities. We're probably bedded out in Dallas and Houston in the terms of number of hospitals we have. We really, in personal opinion, don't need any more hospital beds. What we need is more primary care docs. We need more adherence to wellness programs and more engagement of patients. You know, one of the things that we're doing is the Diabetes Health and Wellness Institute that started out as a joint effort between the city of Dallas and Baylor several years ago, and it's, you know, we took a rec center in Dallas, and it's now a diabetes education, health, and wellness program, because frankly, it's the right thing for the people. And by the way, it's the right thing for us, because the southern sector of Dallas has a huge percentage of diabetics that are not insured that show up in our ED. So that's the most expensive episode of care they could possibly have to manage their ED, because they're not managing it, they're reacting to it. But what if we intervene and help them manage it proactively? And those are the types of things that we're trying to do to generate enough scale with that merger to serve the population of Texas. I think you'll see more. I think as you'll see kind of the niche is not the right word, but the players in healthcare that do one specific segment of a holistic care of a human, you know, like the hospice care providers. That's probably not a good example because their payment model is pretty secure from the government, but you know, rehab. You know, we're in JVs with rehab because rehab, how does it exist in a pop health model? It really doesn't. But the list goes on in my personal opinion that, you know, you need to be part of a holistic well-being of the patient and to get that patient engaged. So that's personally why I think that we'll see this continue. People need scale, systems need scale, and patients need a home.
That's a great description. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to add to that topic?
I think you covered it.
Aaron, you've got a great question ahead of you. I think one that everybody in the audience will be interested in. How would you define health IT interoperability, a famous phrase in the industry today, but not understood the same way by probably any two people? And how are you prioritizing this initiative?
Explaining interoperability, especially when you're explaining to a non-techie person, is always a very interesting discussion. So I'll use an analogy. Just recently, last night, my 4-year-old wanted to download Inside Out, the movie, the Pixar movie, onto her iPad to watch. And she had it on Blu-ray, she had it on there. So they had a little code they give you, and so you would go on a Disney site, and it says, hey, you need to link your Apple account to your Disney site. Okay, I said yes. It did that. I entered a code in, boom, the movie downloaded to the iPad. And it was a couple of clicks of a button, and sure enough, she had the movie, and this morning she gets up and she's ecstatic. She can watch Inside Out on her iPad and have her Cheerios. Okay. It was very simple to do that. It was very effortless on my part. It was very easy to understand. It was 3 clicks of a button. I gave authorization explicitly to do so. It didn't really cost me anything more. And there was the with me factor. What was in it for me? Well, to see my 4-year-old happy, and she wasn't going to get grumpy. So to the degree of it, that's how I explain interoperability to people, is that it's an ease of being able to exchange data seamlessly across disparate architectures and modalities without much effort and without much barrier and obstacle to the people using the technology. Right now, I serve on the ONC faculty committee for API integration, and it's really talking about the rapid adoption and push for mandating standards within the EHR community and beyond EHR, since the EHR Association has gotten a little upset saying just EMRs, but across the whole entire healthcare continuum to use open APIs of some sort. And you look at what's happened with the Sequoia Project and FHIR and other things that are going on in the industry, and the ONC and HHS have recognized, okay, we need to start putting some, again, those rules of the road in place to allow for that open architecture to occur, to allow for just the experience I gave you, that sort of that seamless, effortless, connecting different technologies together across a common universal framework. So looking at a grand scale, there's a huge push right now. I personally believe that is going to become the norm, as it should have been to begin with. These very closed silos, these very closed databases. I mean, every one of the EMR vendors runs on a month's database. I'm sorry, it's 1960s technology. It is what it is. So you can get them to talk to each other. You can put an overlay framework together to get that data to share. So interoperability is really there. There's other barriers besides technology holding that back. And I think that's going to be overcome. What are we doing locally to overcome that? I'm a believer you kind of get what you share. If you share dirty data, you're going to get dirty data back. So we're doing a lot locally to make sure that everything is accurate, succinct, our processes are down. We are modernizing, especially our HIE and our patient and physician portal, to be able to accept the FHIR framework and be able to really have HL7 conversations utilizing FHIR. Also, a lot of development work with a couple of startups in the area, trying to see how can we integrate wearable technology data into the EMR and make it worthwhile. The interesting argument I get from clinicians often is, well, that data, I don't know where that data came from, it could be dirty data. Well, how do you validate the data off of your Apple Watch is relevant enough to say, okay, yep, your blood pressure is pretty accurate for me to take that and run with it. So we're doing a lot of that sort of thing. Again, you're in an elementary stage there, I think, across the ecosystem, but it's getting there. So, in a nutshell, the industry is very much in its infancy, but for anybody trying to explain interoperability, use the Disney scenario, use the other scenarios, we do this every single day. We do it with banking transactions, and I said this to the Senate Help Committee directly. I said, it is ridiculous that I can be anywhere in the world and check my credit score, and it's valid. But yet, if I'm anywhere in the world, and heaven forbid something is wrong with me, I can't get my priors, I can't get an H&P, I can't get anything. So how is that valid? How is that fair? We've got to change that.
Any other comments on that topic? Did that help everybody in the audience? Because that is a very critical issue that we're facing today. We all need to be on the same wavelength, I think, between vendors and providers in that particular arena. Joey, we've talked a lot about telemedicine. We talked about it this morning. We talked about it again even in this particular discussion. But once again, what is your organization currently doing to support the healthcare needs of patients and consumers through telemedicine, and how do you anticipate this will grow or change in the future?
Just time and the multiple coverages I think we've got on this. I don't really have much more to elaborate on. I think we've got them all said. If there are other questions we need to get to, unless you want to have me sit here and talk about telehealth all day and just keep you guys from work, I'm sure that would be fun, but I don't know if we want to have some time to get to open questions from the floor.
I think we do. I think we do want to be able to have open questions from the floor. How about it? Got some people up there that would like to ask some key questions?
About telehealth.
Raffle first. That's exciting. We're going to do the raffle first, but if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, we're going to queue up to a microphone. That is in the back. I see people moving in the right direction. Follow that crowd. Great. So queue up there, but we're going to do the raffle first.
Okay, so rather than collect business cards and go through that process, because there's a lot of you guys here, we took our registration spreadsheet, and Shanna.
I hope you just keep going with gifts. Everyone seems to like that quite a bit. So, there were a couple of aha moments. Matt, listening to you, you were talking about not just the technology, but for lack of a better word, called care paradigm, or the broader philosophy about how you're engaging the patient population, or strategy on that. And additionally, the comment on, if they only drank less soda, well, on the opposite end of the spectrum of the soda, or the hamburger, or the cigarette, or any of these behaviors, you have multi-billion-dollar companies that aren't just counting sodas, and they're not just saying, hey, drink McDonald's, drink soda at McDonald's, or eat another hamburger. But they're leveraging deep psychographics and deep, complex models to understand the driving factors in those consumers' life to get them to drink that soda. So how have you seen, or are you leveraging any of the consumer insights, psychographics to drive, essentially consumer behavior among your populations to drive those outcomes?
I'll take a first shot at it. I think our efforts there are best characterized as immature. I think one area we started on is our own employee wellness. So you see we use the Thrive program, which I think is actually, I don't know if that's hey Sarah or somebody here, keep me honest, that's a third-party program that we use, and it's got like a brand name, right? The Thrive programs. Yeah, so, okay, all right. So, you know, I registered because I want to win points. Somebody promised me I could win something. I don't know, hopefully a gift card for one of those Flavor Flav deals. So, you know, we're doing it for employee wellness, and you get a lot of that engagement, gamification. It's very, very immature when it comes to kind of our consumer breakdown. You see it happening more from kind of a market analysis. So like we, for instance, we JV with a third party that does standalone, they're actually emergency hospitals is how they're classified. And they bring to the table just incredible analytical capabilities around like the demographic of the, you know, they can supposedly have like Starbucks, you know, you put it on this corner, it's going to have the best throughput, that kind of stuff. So right now, I guess what I would say is it's very immature and limited primarily outside of our own employees to marketing purposes. But it's something that we definitely want to see improve. I mean, I think that's kind of the promise. So we have a multi-layer strategy that we lovingly call the layer cake for lack of a more sophisticated term. But you know, you've got kind of the physician transaction systems of the EHRs, and that's all they are, is they're transaction systems. And then the next layer of that is the connectivity, where we reach out to everybody in our shared savings program or our health plan and start to aggregate that data. And the next layer is the analytics. And that's where I think we start to gain insight around. There was a great example, as one of the big data vendors was trying to explain to us, where they saw like they did a study on a number of like broken hips. They had like a rash of them in a certain ED in the elderly population, and they put them all on geolocation and figured out that they all lived at the same retirement home, and there was like a broken stair that like 4 of them had fallen down in 1 week. And I mean, those are those things that, first of all, it's a sales guy, you know, really trying to make something sound great. No offense to everybody in the room. Yeah, I did sales too for a while. I know it's a thankless job. But I completely lost my train of thought after I insulted everyone in the room. So those are the types of things that we'd like to see. We'd like to see those. Holy cow, there's this one area, and we're starting to see this now when we look at certain sectors of our population. You know, this is a food desert. You know, there's not a grocery store here, so you can feel superior because everybody's having Dr. Pepper and snowballs for breakfast, but the only thing there is a 7-Eleven, you know, and or whatever it is. But so we're trying to start to gain insights there. I just don't think we're there yet.
I would just like to say that one possibility that we probably are all considering is when you look at your after-visit summary, whether it's an inpatient visit or an ambulatory visit, making sure that you're communicating the nutritional needs associated with that patient that's targeted to them, the problems they're having, and include that in that after-visit summary in a way that they can understand it and in a language that they understand is pretty critical as well. Yes, go ahead.
I got a much simpler question, actually. Just fast forward 5 years from today, how do you see patient experience sort of evolving into?
Yeah, how do you see patient experience what?
Evolving?
Evolving. I think this is you, disruptive innovation.
Ouch.
Disruptive innovation, yes.
I do think, I'll take it, I'll own it. I do think that is the future, having a continuum of care for the patient managed where they are. Instead of, I'm sure there's a movie theme here, if you build it and they will come. I think that time's over. I think the time is finding a continuum of care pre-visit, post-visit, and everything in between, and us getting better, modeling the other industries that are already there, like the finance industry, and making it about the patient. 5 years is a short period to make that happen, though, but I can help. Disruptive innovation.
And I'll add that, again, I think Lee said this earlier to the vendor session, understanding the problem you're trying to solve. There's a lot of folks out there trying to fit basically a square in a round hole, and really understanding what the cohort you're trying to deal with, resolve, help. Recently you saw announcements in the paper about a children's hospital locally that did some innovation, understanding a targeted population. You're seeing that now across health systems, looking at really what we're trying to tackle and making sure from an experience perspective it matches what you're doing and what you're really going after. So I would say that it's critical, but also understand what it is you're trying to solve, because that right there is fundamental, and you'll lose the whole key if you don't do it right.
I actually think you mentioned a good point there, Erin, in that it's not a one solution's going to fit everybody either. How you handle your homeless population, this is how you handle your diabetics population, this is how you handle your behavioral health population. It might be different how you get that continuum of care for each one of those populations, so keeping that in mind. Another question?
Howdy. I'm Ag, that's it. The question I have was...
We'll take your question anyway.
So the question is about after somebody is discharged, following up on their medication plan. We mentioned how low that really is, and I was curious to hear the feedback on why we think that is, really. What are the factors that are preventing people from following through on their plans?
With them, via palm in hand, there's vendors out there called Rounding Well that questions them. I think it's a multifaceted problem. Money, I think, is a big one. Lack of education, lack of time, and in a population that we like our Big Macs, etc., obviously health isn't a priority. And so there's some research out there that we've been following that the top indication when a patient is discharged from the ED that they'll follow their discharge instructions is as simple as them thinking the ED physician actually cared about them. And so scripting in the ED with our physicians and making sure they make a connection, that's what we've found makes the biggest impact.
Thank you very much.
This is a conundrum I think we're facing, which I really think you touched on is, and a lot of times I almost feel like we're scared to talk about it, but the reality is the patients have a part in this. And as shocking as it is that somebody in a non-health situation may not be vested in understanding their meds or asking the clarifying question. Like you said, that we love our Big Macs, whatever, but we've got to figure out a way to continue to reach patients, prospective patients, really just, individuals and humans in our country to help them to understand how important of a role they are going to play in this process. I do think, what I touched on earlier, when they are either, I hate to say forced, but they are forced into having that relationship with you because you're managing their life singularly as part of the population, or, sadly enough sometimes, but true, we all are driven by it, when they have a financial incentive to do that, that's when we will start to change those behaviors.
I think it's important. One more thing, just to touch on. It's important that you actually follow. Take one example and follow it through to conclusion. And recently, we did that with a certain med that was being prescribed for folks that were coming off of double bypass. It was basically a blood thinner they were going home with. And what we found was when we did the whole discharge process, the meds were sent over to Walgreens or whatnot. We were following back from the fact for adherence and persistence, which is what you're speaking towards. And they were not following through with the full regimen of pills and whatnot. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? Well, it ended up the way that the actual med sentence was written within the EMR, the dosage was different than what the interpretation was on the Walgreens side of what they were giving them, which was more expensive, just because of the way it was written. And so what we started doing was collaborating with the local pharmacy and said, okay, wait a minute, how do you dispense this? How is the patient going to get it versus what we're actually prescribing? Because the intent could be there, just could be smaller doses of it or whatnot that would bring the cost down but still get the same end clinical result. So we brought a clinical steering team to get together with the outside retail pharmacists and go, okay, how should we start standardizing medicines and stuff for standard types of meds that are going home from discharge? That seemed to make a big impact. So sometimes it's not as much as anything big, except for truly, again, going back to understanding the problem and following all the way through.
Build on Joey's point, it occurs to me that I wonder, I know so many people who still do what their doctor says and they don't feel they manage their own health. It's a very old paradigm, but part of me wonders if it's a shift in just making them realize they own their health. It sounds so intuitive, but I still know so many people that say, well, my doctor told me, why do you take that? My doctor told me to. And I wonder if that's part of the key of getting consumers to realize you own your health. It's not your hospital, it's not your physician, it's not, it's you.
So I have a
question regarding ECQMs, electronic clinical volume measures, and what all your organizations are doing in order to prepare for that wave that is about to hit us, in getting the data right. Looking at the complexity behind what CMS has done with this ECQM process is huge. A lot of the forefront folks have said that 80% of the effort is within the organizations for getting the data right, 20% is the vendor. So I'm curious what all four of your organizations are doing to prepare for ECQMs.
I will, anybody else want to start? I'm willing to start on that one because we've had a lot of discussion about this. And it's much more complicated than we thought, so I'm so glad you brought it up because I don't think our executives understand it at all. And just as recently as yesterday, I brought to our leadership team our COO, our Chief Quality Officer, our Chief Nursing Officer, every single leader in that organization and said, this is a big deal. We're going to present it to you in terms that you can understand really, really simple terms. But you can expect that our quality scores are going to go down. And we're all going to be shocked. So I'm just going to simplify this for those of you who may not know very quickly. Today, most core measures are abstracted. So some wonderful human being with a good brain looks through that medical record, looks through all the documentation that the various physicians have documented, and tries through all kinds of mental calculations in their own brain to interpret what happened with the care of that patient and then document that information that then results in the core measure being sent to CMS. With e-measures, what is happening is we are going to electronically submit, just as we have electronically submitted for the beginning part of immediately use, those measures. So the core measures will be electronic, where you say, well, what's the big deal? It should be easier, you can submit it, it's not manual. Here's the big deal. The brain that was interpreting what was in the chart to what the core measure was isn't there anymore. So the detail of the data that you need to come up with that measure has to be in discrete fields within the EMR. Can you imagine what this is going to mean to the physicians? Because there's no one to go look at the text that they entered that was not discrete data and interpret what did they mean about this so that you collect the correct data. So what's going to happen immediately is as we pull that data out of the system electronically, we're probably going to be missing stuff that the brain of the abstract has interpreted before, and the scores will go down. So from your question about vendors, we happen to be an Epic site, and it's an extremely, extremely detailed process to understand how you get all of that data that was text into coded data that's discrete, that can be calculated, an enormous, very time-consuming process. And one that everybody should be starting right now, or we're never going to make it in time because we have to do two right now. Anybody else want to comment on that topic?
Our organization, I have a CMO that is wonderful and very focused, of course, on quality. And so we, at the end of last year, switched all our internal reporting to mirror this new reporting. And so the executives no longer see what's abstracted, they already see what our scores are going to be when we go. It was a rude awakening. But it's really changed the paradigm of the organization.
And to help you.
They didn't. Sorry, guys.
I just can only say that would you agree everybody needs to start right now?
Yes. Yes.
Anybody else in the audience want to comment on that topic?
I'll also say something, Melinda, is that I think you hit the nail on the head. The mappings and what the work effort is, as well as the re-education factor for your quality team and your abstraction teams and whatnot is tremendous. Certainly this process, the second that some of the rules and some of the quality measures were just finalized about a month and a half ago or whatever it was, and we're already behind the curve because our vendors are now getting swamped. With what they've got to do. They've got to push out a series of updates to make sure you can actually map, accurately capture that data. Then you got to work with your clinical teams to make sure they understand what format to put it in. Oh, now this field is now a mandatory field. Why is it mandatory? It's causing me 3 more clicks. Okay, so there's a whole litany of things that have to occur. Start now if you haven't already started.
Hi.
So I have a question. So we have a lot of providers in the audience as well. I know we've talked about a lot of issues for the vendors. Let's throw a question for your staff that's in the audience. What do you see as an up-and-comer? What characteristics do you want to come up with your young leaders that are looking to grow and develop underneath you? How would you like to mentor them? Give us some insight to your employees.
Okay, so I'll kick it off. I maybe have it, some of you in this room probably have this perspective, but I probably have a little bit different perspective on how to build talent than kind of the traditional healthcare model, because I spent, a lot of my formative career in a Big Four consulting firm. And so that's probably also worked in many other ways. But one of the things that it did is it helped me understand that you can't coach speed, so you really need athletes more than you need experience. So if you go to campus and you hire the smartest, most dedicated, fastest, quickest, I mean just mentally quick, if you hire those folks and turn them loose on a problem, they will just surprise the fool out of you. And I kind of have a 3-point scale for people. It's, are you ready, are you willing, and are you able? I think willing and ready beats able 9 times out of 10. If somebody's willing to learn and challenge the way things have been done. So one of the things we did, like for instance, when we started a big EHR program, we set up a shop down in Round Rock and went down the UT's HIT program. It was really funded by the ONC the first year it started, maybe the second year too. And when I was with the firm, I was going to go hire him as entry level. And then when I became CIO, I thought, well, why wouldn't I still hire him as entry level? So it was the first time we ever done that and hired something like 20 or 30 people on a ceremony week, something like that. And now, like we're doing population health building, and there's this, like for instance, there are best resources. Well, except for the people that are in the room. They are some of our best resources. The one that I always think about, there's a guy that everybody's like, oh, well, we can't do this population health tool without this one guy. We hired him. I hired him after I was the CIO. He's been here all of 4 years. He's got 4 years of practical work experience, 4 years in healthcare, 4 years out of college. And we think he's indispensable. So I would say, and we're actually starting another program, internship, IS residency, whatever we're going to call it. We're going to go back of the bus to 4 or 5 colleges and hire 20 of the smartest people we can find every summer, and see what cream rises to the crop. Now we need to do that every year because we have a lot of turnover. This is a very competitive market. We've got about 1,000 employees and we have about 18 to 19% turnover every year. So I'm replacing quite a few people every year, and the more people that I get that are just hungry to change the world really is what we're looking for. And if you're right out of school and maybe you're like me, you're too stupid to know that you can't change the world, I want more of those people. So that's what we look for.
Wholeheartedly agree, the can-do, anything's possible attitude, you can't coach it. On top of that, lack of ego. If you're not self-aware and you're not willing to admit you don't know the answer, I have no interest, very honestly. But I think Matt covered it very well. Curious, hungry, and self-aware.
Personally speaking, just because I think as leaders we all have different characteristics and traits we look for, and there's no perfect recipe for success. One of the things I look for is how well can you speak to areas that aren't in your domain. If you are a techie, how well can you talk to the clinical side of the house? Because to me, that suggests that you are trying to take a well-rounded view on everything, so that I know when I put a problem in front of you, you aren't just going to think of the way that 999 people solved it before you and got the same result 999 times. Because if you're interested in building a well-rounded perspective on whatever it is you do, you're going to take a well-rounded perspective to whatever problems you try to solve. So just a little bit of a different building upon, but a little bit of a different perspective I have on just who I look for as far as kind of an up-and-comer perspective.
I would say ditto to all three of those, and sort of a unique thing, I've grown up in my healthcare career here in North Texas. This is 11 years in healthcare and now 16 years in IT. And I've worked for 3 amazing CIOs who let me basically spread my wings and even move on when it was time to move on to the next role up. And so what I look for is passion, what I look for is hunger, what I look for is dedication, but also somebody who is not afraid to stand up to the bullies of the organization. We all have them, we all deal with them, we all try to manage them and therapeutically extract them if it's possible. But to those who can, with the right gusto and the right appreciation, the right respect, deal with them, resolve them, and still overcome adversity, those are the people who end up lasting last. Because you're never going to find an organization that's 100% a right peach. You never will. But for those who have the fortitude and the guts to be able to do it and handle that and still keep true to who they are and still keep true to the patients and the mission of the organization, those are the ones that end up lasting. Those are the ones that get the best opportunities, the best projects, and the best everything. So.
It was a selfish question on my part, I admit. All right, well, we're going to wrap up. If anybody has any more questions, at this point in time, I'm going to excuse the CIOs and let them go settle and exit out of here. They're very busy people, and we really appreciate their time.